What is going on, guys? We're back with more picks and predictions. This weekend, the UFC goes to Seattle for a fight night headlined by Israel Adesanya versus Joe Pyfer. Izzy, obviously, on a 3-fight skid right now, hasn't looked the same in a while, hasn't picked up a win since his knockout over Alex Pereira. So obviously his last win, extremely impressive, but now off a couple losses fighting Joe Pyfer. It's going to be interesting in this main event to see what he still has in the tank. Overall, decent fight night. Michael Chiesa versus Niko Price on the main card is a little bit insane in my opinion, but obviously, Chiesa's retirement fight, I'll give him that, give him a main card spot, no worries. Overall, like I said, decently good fight night, low key, in my opinion. I think there's some pretty banger matchups here, like Ricky Simon, Adrian Yanez. Looking forward to that. We got Navajo, Stirling on this card, undefeated prospect. Chase Hooper is back on this card, Bahamondes on this card. Mansur Abdul-Malik, some pretty decent guys on this card. Obviously, former champ Alexa Grasso as well, so decent fight night. Without further ado, let's break it down. We've been doing really well in 2026 so far. So let's continue this streak, and let's jump right into the picks and predictions for UFC Seattle. To kick things off, we're going to break down Israel Adesanya versus Joe Pyfer. You already know how we do things here. I'm going to break down the fights that you guys really want to hear about first. If you are hardcore and you want to know the breakdown for Alexia Thainara versus Bruno Brazil, stick around till the end. But in the meantime, let's break down this main event. We got Adesanya versus Pyfer. Adesanya, like I said, is on a 3-fight skid going into this matchup, but 3 extremely solid losses. I mean, he is fighting the best of the best. Sean Strickland, Dricus du Plessis, Nasruddin Imavov, and Pyfer on a 3-fight win streak off that Jack Hermanson loss that he kind of got fraud checked in somewhat. Had a ton of hype before that. Still has a bunch of hype though. Obviously, then goes on, beats Marc-Andre Barriault, whatever win. Kelvin Gastelum, whatever win, but obviously Gastelum he could have put out in the first round. Anyone who doesn't have the chin of Gastelum gets put out in the first round of that fight, and then beats Abus Magomedov, who is sneaky good but also sneaky bad. It's kind of hard for me to gauge Abus Magomedov. He's kind of shit. He has shit cardio, but then he's also kind of good, where he is kind of a winner at the same time. Now, Adesanya, I'm going to pick Adesanya to win this one. I'm going to keep it pretty straightforward. I think that Israel Adesanya is the better fighter. And I think that, Joe Pyfer has to find a knockout here that he definitely can, in my opinion. But I just don't think that Joe Pyfer has the ground game to just kind of go out there and swarm Adesanya. Adesanya had a big, time at the top where no one could kind of get to him. He couldn't get taken down very easily. I think that Joe Pyfer will struggle to kind of smother him in the grappling. His best way to win this fight is by knockout, obviously Adesanya's chin. But Adesanya's taken a whole year off since that loss to Nasruddin Imavov, and even in that fight, we saw what someone like Imavov did to Kyle Baralio, just absolutely starched him in the striking, just nothing coming his way that he kind of needed to worry about against Baralio, and Israel Adesanya was kind of dancing on Nasruddin Imavov. So Imavov, I think, is a very sound, very technical striker in this division, very quick as well, and Adesanya was just kind of a level above him in that first round. He did whatever he wanted, looked like he was going to cruise to a decision until he did get caught. That could easily happen here again, but I think Adesanya is still leagues ahead. I like the whole year he's taken off. I don't think he's someone that's going to deal with ring rust. I mean, 36 years old, former champion, 24-5, has tons of experience, fought the best of the best, is the best of the best as well himself. So I don't think Adesanya is going to deal with any ring rust here. I think this is a matchup where it's tough to kind of bet him, but I would ideally lay chalk at these odds, and maybe I still will. I haven't laid any chalk just yet, but Israel Adesanya in this spot, he's the better fighter. The better fighter doesn't always win though. We do know this, but in a matchup like this, it's tough for me to pick against Adesanya when someone like Adesanya, who's been at the top for so long, has to know coming into this matchup what his weaknesses are, has to be aware. So maybe in a different scenario, I'd be like, yeah, this guy's a better fighter, but he's chinny. He's going to get knocked out by this guy with big power. I'm taking the guy with big power. The reason why I can't do that here is just because Adesanya is someone whose fight IQ I do respect. His experience is something obviously everyone should be respecting. So I think he has to come in here knowing what his weaknesses are, knowing how he walks out of here with a dub. I don't think Adesanya is here just for a paycheck. I do think he wants to get back in that win column, and I see him doing it. He definitely has a path against Joe Pyfer. I think Joe Pyfer is, a little bit overhyped in the sense of I don't think he's as good as people might think he is. His wins are decent, but his wins aren't great. I mean, Abus Magomedov, like I said, I don't know how to gauge that guy. Kelvin Gastelum is pretty trash. He did, in all fairness, should have kind of got him out of there in the first round. Marc-Andre Barriault, whatever as well. So I'm going to go with Israel Adesanya to win this one by decision. I think he dances around. I think he, stays at range, doesn't get knocked out, keeps moving. I think Pyfer is going to start shooting takedowns, watch. And also, Pyfer's cardio is something that just has never looked good going late into fights. So I like Pyfer to kind of gas out a little bit here as well. I don't think Adesanya will have really much to worry about post like the second round in this fight. So I think 3, 4, 5 is going to be much less dangerous for Adesanya. 1 and 2 will be. I'm going to be kind of on the edge of my seat for the first 10 minutes of this fight, but like I said, I'm going to bank on Adesanya to win this one. The more I talk about it, the more I do want to lay some chalk. Let's move on to the next matchup. Moving on to the co-main event, we got Alexa Grasso versus Maycee Barber, and I'm going to go with Maycee Barber to win this one, but this is not a fight I would bet on whatsoever. I don't love the price on Maycee Barber either. I think this fight should be as close to a pick'em as possible. So maybe there's some value on Grasso here, to be completely honest. But outside of, betting this fight, the only bet that maybe looks good here is potentially an over or something like that. I do see this fight going the distance, but Maycee Barber, I'm going to pick her because she just does a little bit more in the octagon. I like her activity, and in a fight that I see going the distance, I think that Barber's going to give the judges a little bit more to score in this matchup. That being said, though, Grasso's boxing is super clean. She's super tough, and if she doesn't get taken down here, which there's a good chance she doesn't, there could be a world where she looks really good in this matchup, bounces back, a couple losses, a draw before that, so hasn't won since, Valentina Shevchenko 3 years ago, massive underdog in that fight. Now she's going to get Maycee Barber, who, picked up a win on Karine Silva 3 months ago. I would say that Barber has a little bit of momentum coming into this matchup. She's looked good. Against Karine Silva, she looked pretty decent, especially coming off a long layoff, which was something interesting. So I'm going to pick Barber here. She's got some momentum. I think, she's going to work a little bit harder in this matchup. That being said, though, Alexa Grasso, I think, is pretty live, so I wouldn't go anywhere near this money line-wise. I like an over, though. I don't really see a finish happening. Let's move on to the next matchup. Moving on to the next matchup, we got Michael Chiesa versus Niko Price, and this is Michael Chiesa's retirement fight. That's probably why this is on the main card. Niko Price, short notice replacement opponent for Chiesa. Chiesa had a different opponent in this matchup who did pull out. Now he's fighting Niko Price, who just got knocked out a month ago, taking this fight on short notice. The pick here is going to be Michael Chiesa. I think that Niko Price is just past the point where he's any good in his career. He's coming off 3 straight losses. Demba Garimbo, who has been checked a couple times, is not as good of a prospect as a lot of us thought he was. Jacoby Smith is obviously a demon. And, funnily enough, Niko Price did pretty good in that first round against Jacoby Smith as, a plus 1,000 underdog. So shout out to Niko Price for that first round, but ends up getting subbed in the second. Gets knocked down the first round by Veritanikov, who also is just not good whatsoever. Now he's fighting Michael Chiesa. I think Chiesa simply just takes him down here, grapples, finds a submission. I think it's pretty straightforward. I don't think that Niko Price plays spoiler, especially on short notice. I think Chiesa gets a win in his retirement fight, puts the gloves down, and, walks out of there with the finish. So give me Michael Chiesa. I think he finds a submission. Let's move on to the next matchup. Moving on to the next matchup, we got Julian Erosa versus Lerryan Douglas, and I'm going with Douglas to win this one. I think it's worth laying the chalk here too. He's a really explosive striker. He's going to be the better striker in this matchup, no doubt. He's going to be faster. He's younger. He is a little bit shorter here, though, but the reach is about the same, about a 2-inch reach advantage for Erosa, so nothing too insane. Erosa obviously has a bunch of experience. He's going to be the crafty vet in this matchup, of course, but I just think that, Erosa's durability just isn't there, especially for someone who throws as hard as, Lerryan Douglas. So I think Douglas finds a knockout here. I think he actually, has a really good performance. His nickname is Gunslinger, and, he's definitely earned that. 13 wins, and 7 of them have come by knockout, but those knockouts have been brutal. A brutal knockout on the Contender Series in 30 seconds to, get his UFC contract, and I think Julian Erosa is a good debut opponent for Douglas. I think, Erosa potentially could have some success if he grapples here, but Douglas should be good enough to, not have an insane gap in the grappling. So I think that Lerryan Douglas comes out here, finds a knockout. I think he'll be too quick on the feet, too clean on the feet, and his power is definitely going to show through. So give me Douglas by knockout. Let's move on to the next matchup. Moving on to the next matchup, we got Mansur Abdul-Malik versus Yousri Belgaroui, and I'm going to go ahead and pick Yousri Belgaroui to win this one. Now, this could be a little bit of a revenge pick because Yousri, I did pick against him against Asmat Bakoyev. He kind of proved me wrong in all aspects there. Got taken down, but got right back up and knocks Asmat Bakoyev out. He is a very highly touted kickboxer, fought Alex Pereira, trains with Alex Pereira. Obviously, he has the striking credentials to kind of stand up with anyone. Is going to be the better striker in this matchup against Mansur Abdul-Malik. And Mansur Abdul-Malik, I think, he is pretty athletic and he is a good prospect, but he's got 4 fights in the UFC, 1 draw. It was initially a win for him, ended up being overturned to a draw because of an illegal strike. But in general, he has a win over Dusko Todorovic at -500. Todorovic, one of the worst fighters on the roster. Nick Klein, one of the worst fighters on the roster, again, minus 1,300 favorite. Cody Brundage, who we went life and death with, went 1-1 into the third round, and, a close fight. Both rounds were close. Cody Brundage is a minus 900 favorite going 1-1 into the third round against Cody Brundage. That's not impressive whatsoever. Antonio Trocoli, I'm literally naming probably some of the worst the 4 worst fighters on the roster, and that's who Mansur has gotten 4 fights in a row. He's been 4-digit favorites against these guys, and he's just getting layup matchup after layup matchup. I don't think he's this blue chip prospect that people might think just because of that betting line. I mean, Yousri should be minus 1,000 against, Trocoli and stuff like that. So give me Yousri to win this one. And like I said, I might be overcompensating because I picked Bekoyev and was just completely incorrect about Yousri. But I think overall, Mansur might be a little bit of a better grappler than Bekoyev. But if Mansur can't keep this guy down, this guy is a problem on the feet. This guy will be dangerous on the feet. And we saw Cody Brundage kind of tap away at Mansur and pick a round off him. If Brundage can do that, Yousri can most definitely do that. So give me Belgaroui to win this one. I think he's a slight underdog. I will lay some chalk on that for sure. Let's move on to the next matchup. Moving on to the next matchup, we got Kyle Nelson versus Terrance McKinney. And I'm going to go with the underdog here in Kyle Nelson. I think that, Terrance McKinney, he's a fighter who has an insane first round in him. He has never won a fight outside of the first round, so I don't think you can really pick him against any fighter who I think that can kind of keep up with McKinney in the fight. I think Nelson is pretty close to McKinney. Obviously, McKinney's going to be more athletic, more explosive. He's going to have that on a lot of people, though. But it's just that once this fight leaves the first round, Nelson's going to be more of a dog. We already know that. He's going to be able to find a finish on McKinney. McKinney's not trying to fight 15 minutes. He never is. Like I said, I don't think he's ever gotten a win outside of the first round. So give me Kyle Nelson to kind of survive an early storm and then kind of go forward and get McKinney out of there. I think overall, Nelson is fairly durable. He has been knocked out a couple times in his career, but he got knocked out last by Steve Garcia, and Steve Garcia, I mean, he's on an absolute tear. He's beaten, Calvin Kattar. He's beaten David Onama. He even has a win over Melquizael Costa, which is aging gracefully as well. So give me Kyle Nelson to win this one. I think he dogs it out. I think Terrance McKinney obviously, has a little bit of success super early, but doesn't have enough to finish this fight. And then, the tides turn and Nelson kind of takes over. So this is going to be an interesting fight. This is going to be a fun one. It's going to be a war, and it's definitely not going the distance. So give me Nelson as a dog. Let's move on to the next matchup. Moving on to the next matchup, we got Ignacio Bahamondes versus Tofiq Musayev. And I'm going with Bahamondes to win this one. Now, contrary to belief, Tofiq Musayev, I will say, will have to get takedowns here. I'm not saying that because he's an EV fighter. But I'm just saying that he's not going to be the better striker against Bahamondes. Bahamondes, super rangy, super tall, and a lot of people are going to struggle with that reach of Bahamondes. He's got a 6-inch reach advantage here against Tofiq, and Tofiq is a solid striker. He's got good kicks. He can be aggressive as well on the feet, but I don't think Tofiq Musayev is anything that, for example, Emmanuel Torres isn't. And I think Ignacio Bahamondes, he took some of Manuel Torres' best shots, which not a lot of people can say, was able to eat them and then put him down. So I don't think Tofiq Musayev on the feet in 3 rounds can kind of stand with Bahamondes. So I do think he's going to have to grapple here, even though, like I said, I'm not saying that because he's an EV. He's actually a pretty good striker himself. It's just Bahamondes is going to be on a better level, with the range. It's going to have some tools that Musayev doesn't have in this fight. So I'm going to take Ignacio Bahamondes to win this one. Like I said, Musayev is going to have to grapple here, and I think that, he could potentially get some takedowns on Bahamondes here. I don't think Bahamondes is, the best at takedown defense. It can definitely see a world where, Ignacio's on his back for maybe 2 minutes of a round, and that round's now getting close. We don't really know what it's going to do. Ignacio's going to have to kind of work his way back into the round. So things could get interesting on a round basis, but overall, I think that Bahamondes does stay standing long enough in these 15 minutes to either get a decision or a knockout. Musayev is tough. I don't think I've ever seen Musayev knocked out. He's been knocked out once in his career, but outside of that, he is pretty tough himself. So maybe Bahamondes goes all the way with this guy, but overall, I think Bahamondes should win this one. Like I said, on the feet, I don't think there's enough danger from Musayev, even though he is pretty good. And, I don't think Musayev's grappling game is leagues ahead where, he'll be able to just kind of wet blanket Bahamondes. So give me Ignacio to win this one. Let's move on to the next matchup. Moving on to the next matchup, we got Chase Hooper versus Lance Gibson Jr. And I'm going to go ahead and pick Chase Hooper here, but I'd be careful kind of parlaying Hooper all over the place this week. This fight could get kind of close, at least if Chase Hooper can't get his grappling going here, I think this fight can get real close because on the feet, Hooper does have some more UFC experience, but Lance Gibson is probably going to be more athletic, a little bit more explosive, have a good low kick or something like that kind of dictates a lot of the striking here. And Lance Gibson Jr. did look a little bit out of sorts in his fight against Bobby Green, but who's really going to look, solid on the feet against Bobby Green? It's a really tough ask, especially Lance Gibson Jr. taking that fight on real short notice. So Gibson Jr. is probably the better striker here, but he also is primarily a wrestler. So it's interesting because the only real advantage I see for Chase Hooper is, outside of experience at least, is his grappling and his jiu-jitsu. But I think he's so far ahead when it comes to his jiu-jitsu. I think his jiu-jitsu is leagues ahead of a lot of people at this level. So I'm going to pick Hooper to win this one because if he can just start rolling around with Lance Gibson, it's going to be in his world, and you're really going to see him take over this fight. But while this fight stays on the feet, Lance Gibson could make this interesting. If Gibson can stop all the takedowns from Chase Hooper, things could also get interesting. So I can see this fight getting real spicy, at least for these odds. I wouldn't want to really touch it or parlay it. Maybe there's a prop somewhere in here that I have to still look for, but I'm going to pick Chase Hooper to win this one. Be careful in the parlays. Let's move on to the next matchup. Moving on to the next matchup, we got Marcin Tybura versus Tyrell Fortune, and I'm going to go with Tyrell Fortune to win this one. I actually do pick Marcin Tybura quite a bit, but I think after that last loss, I think the issue is, the age, the athleticism, it's all just going to catch up to Tybura. And the main thing for Tybura is I think he needs a guy who he can really exploit in the grappling. And I think Fortune is someone he won't be able to. Fortune's going to be more explosive, more athletic, and I know Tyrell Fortune has better cardio than Marcin Tybura. So I think Tybura is kind of submission or bust here. Tybura is kind of live for the first 10 minutes of this fight, and then, or sorry, not even 10 minutes, maybe the first 6 to 7 minutes of this fight, and after that, it's all Tyrell Fortune. So give me Tyrell Fortune to win this one. I think he's live the entire time. I think he can knock Tybura out. I used to love to pick Tybura, and it did pay me out quite a bit in the past, but I got to pick Tyrell here. Let's move on to the next matchup. Moving on to the next matchup, we got Casey O'Neill versus Gabriella Fernandes, and I'm pretty big on Casey O'Neill in this spot. I think that, Casey O'Neill is coming off a pretty long layoff, almost 2 years, about 1 year and 7 months, which is something to note, something that is pretty interesting. But overall, I think that, Casey O'Neill, I love her activity inside the octagon. She's definitely going to be the higher volume fighter here. Gabriella is going to have more power, more danger, but in women's MMA, at least at this level, it's not like Fernandes is, just starching people out of there. She has more power. She has definitely more finishing ability, but is it big enough for me to kind of overlook, the fact that she's going to be down on volume, the fact that Casey O'Neill is so active, the fact that Casey O'Neill might even shoot some offensive takedowns here in this matchup? Also, Gabriella Fernandes is not super good as the fight extends, so I expect Casey O'Neill to definitely pick up that last round in this matchup, that third round. The first couple rounds are going to be close. I think this fight will go down to a potential split decision, something close, because Fernandes will probably have moments, but O'Neill will be ahead on the numbers. So I'm going to pick Casey O'Neill here. She's an underdog. She's going to be more active. I think she is, fairly equivalent when it comes to skill level here. I don't think there's any real reason for this fight to kind of be priced this. I think if anything, this fight should be priced for minus 150 Casey O'Neill in my opinion. So I like Casey O'Neill in this spot. Obviously, this is a close fight. It's not like Casey O'Neill is going to walk through Gabriella Fernandes. That's not true. Fernandes is very tough, and it's pretty close. But I think overall, O'Neill's going to be more active. She's going to give the judges a little bit more to score, and unless she gets dropped real bad or potentially knocked out or something, I think she does kind of inch out this decision. So give me Casey O'Neill to win this one. Let's move on to the next matchup. Moving on to the next matchup, we got Navajo Stirling versus Bruno Lopes, and I'm going to keep this one pretty short. Navajo Stirling is, a very talented striker. He is 8-0 undefeated, and some people have said he has some lackluster performances inside the UFC, but that's primarily because he's not finding finishes. He should have finished his UFC debut in Tuco Tokos. Didn't actually end up finishing that matchup. And yeah, he hasn't looked like an insane world beater so far. But, he's gotten wins over decent comp, Ivan Urslan, Rodolfo Bellato. And all these comps kind of line up with, Bruno Lopes. So Bruno Lopes, not a huge jump up in competition. We know Navajo Stirling can beat this level of comp. He is minus 600 for a reason. Feel free to parlay him here and there. I'm not going to play him extremely heavy just because, he's minus 600. But maybe I got him in some parlays, and that's kind of about it. So give me Navajo Stirling to win this one. Let's move on to the next matchup. Moving on to the next matchup. This is a banger fight in my opinion. It's Ricky Simon versus Adrian Yanez, and this fight is pretty interesting. It really only goes two ways. in my opinion, or potentially 3 ways, and that's, can Ricky Simon get the takedowns on Yanez? Yanez does have decent takedown defense, but Ricky Simon is realistically going to be the best wrestler that he's fought, so the takedowns are going to be a bit different here, and I do think Simon can keep Adrian Yanez down in this fight. But that being said, I'm actually going to go ahead and pick Adrian Yanez to win this one, actually, and the reason why I'm doing that is because, we saw Adrian Yanez corner Cameron Smotherman in his fight against Ricky Simon, and Smotherman lost the exact same way, and he just kind of let Ricky Simon gain a bunch of control. And in that fight, Simon gets a little bit tired in that 3rd round, so I think that Yanez is going to make Ricky Simon work here, and I think that Yanez will get taken down, but I'm going to bet on the fact that, actually, let me rephrase, I'm not going to bet because I'm not going to be betting this fight. I think it's too close to call, and realistically, there is a world where Ricky Simon just kind of sits on Adrian Yanez here, but I think that Yanez will work his way back up, and on the feet, Yanez is far cleaner. Simon does have power, of course, but Yanez is going to be the far better striker in this matchup, in my opinion. So if Yanez keeps this fight on the feet, he's going to start taking over, especially if, Ricky Simon gets a little bit tired as this fight goes on because he's pushing a grueling wrestling pace. So it's going to be interesting, and I think that even if Yanez doesn't get up like fully and kind of get into space, if he just makes Ricky Simon work enough where, in rounds 2 and rounds 3, those takedowns, the control is just much harder to get, then Yanez could be live to really start lighting it up in this fight. So I think this fight goes to a real close decision. I think this is a split decision type matchup. So I'm going to go with the underdog in that type of scenario. Give me Adrian Yanez. I think that he can kind of, work for those stand-ups and then go from there. So I'm picking Yanez here, but I wouldn't bet this matchup. If you do want to bet this matchup, a good way to look at it is definitely to watch it live. If, Ricky Simon goes in there and in the 1st round just kind of controls him with ease, then, you don't want to touch this fight. It's kind of over. But if Ricky Simon goes in there and, Yanez is super game with the grappling and, Simon might still pick up that 1st round, but it wasn't easy and he was kind of holding Yanez up against the fence. The takedowns didn't have any control to it, and it doesn't seem like something Simon could do for all 3 rounds. And, Yanez goes even higher plus money because he lost that 1st round, then that could be an amazing spot to pick up some Adrian Yanez. So I'm going to watch this, potentially live bet it. Adrian Yanez is going to be my pick, but not touching this pre-fight. Let's move on to the next matchup. Moving on to the last fight we're going to break down, which is the first fight on the early prelims, Alexia Thainara versus Bruno Brazil. And I'm going to keep this one fairly short because Alexia Thainara is a minus 800 favorite. I'm picking her to win this one. Her grappling is just going to be a little bit too much, or should I say a lot too much for Bruno Brazil in this match. She's able to throw her around, do whatever she wants. The gap is too wide, and she's just better everywhere. 13-1 on an 11-fight win streak, absolutely surging. And, Bruno Brazil is super active, which is cool. She fought a month ago. Now she's fighting again. This is short notice for both of these fighters, and, Thainara is going to win this one. The price tag reflects it. If you want to lay it up, be my guest. I probably won't just because it's way too much chalk, but if you do want to, I don't really see a world where Alexia Thainara loses. And that does it for all the picks and predictions for UFC Seattle. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you did enjoy the breakdowns, hit the like button, share with one of your friends, and let me know in the comments which of my picks you're tailing, which ones you're fading, and why. Love to hear everyone's opinion all the time. Like I said, we'll be super consistent with these videos. We've been doing really good in 2026 so far. If you do want to check out my official bets, like what I'm actually placing for each card, check out kopicks.com. You can see, the actual bets, the unit sizes, what book, what odds, everything right there on the website. We've been up almost every card. Even last card, we didn't do the best on picks. I actually didn't post a pick video, but we have an Instagram, KO Picks on Instagram, so check us out there. We posted our picks there. We always post our picks because it's a lot easier, obviously, for me to make that than this YouTube video, so I did run out of time. Didn't make the video, but did get the picks up on Instagram. Didn't do super hot on picks last week, but our bets were still profitable. The only bets we had, I went pretty small because I didn't like the card. I didn't have as much time to dive into the card last week, so I had a straight on Shamrock, which lost. I had a 2-leg on CLD and Luke Riley, which cashed. Paid off the entire straight plus a little bit more, and then I had a straight on Movzar by decision, which arguably should have lost. I think it should have lost. I don't think Movzar won that fight. I know a lot of people are saying, oh, the commentary. No, even without commentary, I think that fight was a draw, and I think that there is a small argument for Lerryan Murphy to win the 3rd round, but I think if I was to score it, it'd be 47-47 as a draw. But I'm not complaining. Movzar by decision comes in. We're actually in profit once again. So we've profited, I think, every single card except for one so far this year in 2026, doing insanely good on the bets. So check out kopicks.com for those bets, and I will see you guys next weekend. Good luck to all.